the Popcorn Junkies.
Welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
How you doing, Ma?
I'm good.
Okay, so what are we reviewing? We are reviewing a sci-fi epic called The Creator. The Creator.
Yes.
This is directed by Gareth Edwards. And Gareth Edwards is an interesting character.
Yeah.
I don't know what you know about Gareth.
Well, all I know is
Gaza.
he did a film called Monsters.
That's right.
Which you really liked.
I liked it.
You liked it, didn't you? Because it was made for nothing.
Well, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. His ambition was astonishing, and his ability to do it. I mean, I think the only part of it that kind of frustrated me, and what I also liked about his original film was they shot it like on the hoof, moving through Mexico and America and stuff like that, using real people. I liked all that element of it. He used sort of very affordable techniques to kind of create the monsters. It wasn't a disappointment with the film. I just get frustrated that for some reason the monsters in nearly all films just have long legs and are spiders. Sort of, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the bit that got me. But no, he's virtuoso. I mean, he then went on to make Godzilla.
He did one of the Star Wars.
Well, I was going to just say, he did Rogue One, which was one of the kind of add-ons. It wasn't one of the main trilogy films, but it was one of the connecting films, which I have to say I really liked. I thought Rogue One had a lot going for it, and in fact I think it's Rogue One that abuts up to the front and the beginning of the very first Star Wars film we ever saw, which is actually A New Hope. And for me, the final 3 or 4 minutes of Rogue One were the closest anyone has got with the Star Wars franchise to recreating in a modern form the excitement of the original film. So I personally, for me, Gareth Edwards did it spectacularly in those 3 minutes. So yeah. So this film, so it's a sci-fi epic. Now, Mum, come on, be honest with us. The word sci-fi epic or genre doesn't appeal to you, surely?
No, it does. I mean, I love Dune. I love. What else is sci-fi? There must be something else sci-fi.
Star Wars?
I mean, I loved Star Wars in its day.
Yeah. So let's talk about who's in it. John David Washington.
Yes. Why has he got 3 names? It annoys me.
It really annoys me too, because whenever I jot his name down, I put Washington, and then I think, why am I writing down the city of Washington? So it stars. Now this is a challenge, because it stars John David Washington. I like him, but I'm not an enormous fan. I'm not a fan. Not an enormous fan. No, I've always felt that most of his performances just hit a certain level and never get beyond it. I feel like I'm waiting for him to ignite. He was in Tenet, wasn't he? And
he was.
Black Klansman. I mean, it was perhaps his breakout role, but
it's a great effect. I thought you've got to. I think he does this weird thing where he looks to the side and looks down and looks up like that, and that's his acting style.
Do you think that's when he's looking? Do you think that's when he's looking round corners?
No, he just does this all the time, and the camera goes in on him, and he's looking like this. Yeah. I don't know whether somebody's told him not to look like his dad or something. I really like him, but and I actually quite like that style of acting. I've got used to it.
Okay, yeah. Well, so he's quite one note. So that was a challenge for me going in to see this. And then there's Gemma Chan, who, again, I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There are lots of people who love Gemma Chan. I can't say she's floated my boat either.
Nor me.
I found her very.
She's one note if ever there was.
It's almost a little bit like. Do you remember that series? What was it? Not Robots or whatever that series on Channel 4 was that brought her. It's almost like having to act as a robot has never left her.
Yeah, it's true.
It's almost like she was infected by AI, which is kind of curious in this film because it's kind of well placed. But also, I think another notable presence in the cast here is Allison Janney.
She was good, wasn't she?
Yeah, and I think she's the one isn't she the one who plays I, Tonya's mum, and she's just a sort of monstrous character in most things, isn't she?
Yeah, she does. Chain smoking, completely different type of person. Yeah,
I thought it was great to see a woman of her age in a film like that. Okay, so what is this? This is an AI apocalyptic. I mean, it is sci-fi because there's spaceships and there's moon landings and there's stuff going on and flying around. But I thought that does it a disservice, I think, as a description. I think it's a bit more than a sci-fi epic. I actually think this is it's a sort of AI tech dystopian film. And I was really excited about, a lot of people have been talking about how this film has changed the paradigm. There's been a paradigmatic paradigm shift, if you like, in the way in which potentially huge sci-fi films could be made. Do they have to cost $250 million to nearly $500 million to be made, or could they cost a mere snip of 80 million?
I know,
which isn't cheap, but for what he does in this film, I think is quite a good price. So I think
it's extraordinary. I think.
Yeah. So getting into it. So clearly we're parked within the world is in a terrible place. AI. There's been a huge war. Humans and AI have gone to battle. essentially, where we enter the film, we're entering the film where the humans have the upper hand, right? And the AI has been, interestingly, in terms of geopolitical tensions, AI has been kind of corralled into a Southeast Asia part of the world.
Yeah, that's right.
What did you think of that? How did you get to grips with the world?
They'd nuked Los Angeles, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a bit of a problem. They'd nuked Los
So
Angeles.
we're in a world that is full of destruction and devastation and debris, but also tech. And for me, this film very quickly got me very excited because it was just this one was the definition of battered realism.
Yeah, it was. But it also reminded me, without affecting my enjoyment, of a million other films, one of which was Star Wars, of course.
As you were settling into this, I'm interested to know what a 72-year-old woman is grabbing at for enjoyment at this early stage of the film, because we discover quite quickly that John David Washington is undercover. He's in a relationship with Gemma Chan.
It's being a hippie in the jungle.
And we discover that essentially the master creator, if you like, of AI on the globe, on the planet, has, even though AI has been marginalised and sort of beaten, it's a kind of, there's an ebb and flow to the battle. I mean, it's like one has the upper hand, the other. There's resistance fighters, there's all this kind of stuff going on. But, word gets out that the AI creator has essentially created something which is potentially the most powerful weapon known to AI or man ever. So what this film does is it lights the kind of it starts the ignition key with a kind of he's
with a bang.
With a bang. He's undercover. He's betrayed Gemma Chan. Gemma Chan's run off. He's then sort of, in a sense, captured by the rest of the humans and told, you're so good at what you do, we need to get you in there and you need to get the world's most dangerous weapon ever. And in so doing, we discover what?
That the dangerous weapon is a 6-year-old child.
A Care Bear.
A sweetest little girl.
Yeah.
I thought the special effects for the AIs were great.
Yeah, no,
very much, what was the other film? What's it called? The artificial, the one where we see her whole body. She's in the jungle.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina. I mean,
yeah, so you've got all the whirring electronics on the side of that. I liked all that. I don't know if
I loved it.
I found myself obsessing about whether I could see through their head.
I did
you?
Too.
And if you were alive and if you met them, would you want to put your finger through it?
Well,
I did.
I couldn't quite see how everything fitted into their heads when they'd got that great big hole there.
True.
But let me just tell you, when you're saying what did a 72-year-old woman think of it, the thing that I liked immediately, right from the very beginning, were the location shots. It didn't look like a green screen film. Yeah. And sort of very, very sort of soon you had those towers, those stacks that they're called in Thailand, are just, there's nothing like them. And it looked as if they were there. Well, when I look it up when I get home, they were there. So, I mean, that's why it doesn't look like
I think you're right. The work they did on the CGI and blending CGI and sci-fi and futuristic kind of devastation with real landscape, I thought was really seamless.
I did. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And I mean, that was an example for me of something that I've seen in real life and just looked as if it was there.
Right.
And there were lots of others that I don't know so well. I mean, they went to so many different places.
So many different places. Yeah, they absolutely did. And it's I have to confess, there are many moments in this film where the plot is really quite confusing. It's quite simply
very confusing.
Really confusing. It feels like, there's all sorts of kind of alliances and loyalties and then broken loyalties, and John David Washington's working for the humans, but then is he working for the bad humans? Actually, he's working for the bad humans who are actually the good humans. But in a sense, what the film is all about is who is good and who is bad according to which side you're on, which is unfortunately incredibly relevant to the current situation in Israel and Palestine, because the Allison Janney character, essentially what they were doing was good for humans. Everything they were doing was good for humans, but you weren't rooting for them because we were now rooting for the AI.
Yeah, and I thought it gave me a weird feeling in terms of what's happening in the Middle East as I was watching it.
Right.
Because all of this stuff was breaking in real life and I seemed to be watching it on the screen. So it was a weird one, that.
So we discovered that the weapon is a child. And I love the way in which this child was introduced to us, watching telly.
Yeah.
Watching mainstream pulp.
Yeah.
Lots of kind of interesting old historic movies, which if I'd had the time, I would have gone to research afterwards what they were, because I'm sure they're going to be like Flash Gordon and stuff like that. But I like the fact that this young boy, I was getting kind of the Last Emperor vibes from him.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Were you?
She's very serious, wasn't she?
Very serious.
Very serious. I like that about her.
Well, and also what I quite liked about her seriousness was you never quite knew, you were constantly being told that she had the capacity to destroy everything, or would have eventually. And so when so obviously she turned stuff off. I mean, we were getting a little bit of kind of Millie Bobby Brown 11 in Stranger Things. Making things happen. Which always begs the question, if you can do it once, why don't you do it all the time? And that's very Yoda-y too.
Yes, I thought of that too.
So lots of small things, kind of throwing things around through, you know. But she's the first time that AI has been able to kind of mobilise movement and thought and action outside of herself. So I thought that was all rather good.
And they didn't, and somehow, in a way, considering she is the main sort of focus of the film, it sounds a weird thing to say, they didn't overplay her, or she didn't overplay herself, because she was quite restrained in how she was. And it took a long time, actually, the whole film, before she was really close to him. And then eventually they get close.
And I have to say, and that's why I think this film did quite a few things for me that I wasn't expecting. I didn't mind Gemma Chan. I thought she was all right. I didn't think she was as sort of toe curlingly wooden as I found her in everything else. I mean, a bit of stiffness was needed, but you know, she was stiff. I felt John David Washington really gave his all in this. Because by the end,
I did,
and I really rated him.
Review that was so critical. It said he couldn't cut it at all in the emotional scenes. He was really bad in the emotional scenes. I thought that was so unfair.
Because there's that moment where he's kind of, I can't remember again. One of the problems with this film is it's so jam-packed with so many ideas and devices and techniques and all that kind of stuff, which, God almighty, I can't get too much of that. But I do think what actually was revealed after, because of the length of the film, was they were going through the same routine of kind of getting to a place of relative safety, and then the cat and mouse chase would start again, and then they'd all have to run from somewhere to somewhere else, and that just got a bit repetitive after a while. You just felt like there was a very limited number of ways in which they were managing these eruptions of violence. And so I found bizarrely, I found the moments of fighting and conflict a bit predictable and a bit obvious. But around that, I thought John David Washington's connection to this girl, and without giving you a spoiler, it's a bit more complicated than her just being a weapon and just being a girl. There's a closer potential bond there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
I'll tell you what, okay, what do you think of this? I thought this was the long overdue love child, this film, of District 9.
District 9, that's another one I thought of. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you think of the prawns, you know, the aliens that are hemmed into that apartheid-like kind of you know, area. I was really getting that sense. I was feeling exactly the same confused empathy towards the AI when you saw AI sort of, because you had AI kind of humanoids working in the fields, in the paddy fields, normal AI humans, if you like. And there's a wonderful line in this where I think someone says, maybe it's the creator, because we discovered that Gemma Chan is a little bit more than just the daughter of the creator. But there's a line which I thought was such a clever line, and this goes to the heart of everything, and it was this. I wrote it down. You can't stop AI. It's evolution. And for me, that is the most interesting thing I've heard anyone or anything say about AI, because okay, it's developing technology outside of ourselves to think outside of us, but it's the evolution of us.
Yeah.
So is the evolution of AI away from us still the evolution of us?
Yeah. Whoa.
My brain is fizzing. I feel like I've got an enormous hole in my head with stuff going round and round like that.
Funny lines as well. You know the Allison Janney line when she said, have you got it? Have you got the message or whatever it was? And he said, yes, it's a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't hear him.
No, that was funny.
Kill it.
Yeah, I thought there were some other wonderful moments in there. The idea, a couple of things. He felt very much like its father, even if there was no biological aspect to it, and she scanned it and cloned it and created it. So I liked that.
Yeah.
I also really liked the moment where one of the kind of members of the group, the soldier, one of Allison Janney's sort of troop of mercenaries, one of them dies, and there's this device where you can essentially take a USB stick, shove it in the back of a dead person's head.
Isn't that fantastic?
Bring them back to life for 30 seconds and get their last thoughts.
Exactly.
I thought that scene was so visceral, didn't you? The way so she put it into the dead person, took it out, so she'd obviously downloaded something.
Yeah.
Then put it in the back of the head of something else, and the other person was looking at its body.
Yeah.
Looking at itself.
And then somebody on the outside said it'll only last for 4 minutes, and then he gave them the message, and then.
Well, unfortunately,
so
he didn't give them enough of a message, did he? It was, yeah.
No, but it was very clever device. See, putting all my cards on the table, what staggered me about this film was that I really enjoyed it, despite the fact that it kept reminding me of so many other films.
Right.
But I don't mean reminding me in a sense of thinking, oh, I now know the plot, because part of the love, I suppose, and my affection for science fiction films is that I often don't know what the hell's going on until the end, because, well, I mean, it's all sort of that mathematical,
well, there's always
stuff.
Tribes and groups, and it's hard enough in real life.
Yeah, but I so enjoyed it. So each time a name would pop into my head, like District 9, like Star Wars, but it didn't make me appreciate it less. If anything, I appreciated it more.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a bad thing. I thought it was I thought it was a good amalgamation of some of the best bits from some of the best things that we've had. I mean, I think it reached for the kind of epic scale of something like Dune. I do think a couple of my criticisms would revolve around. I think the plotting and the peaks and troughs in the drama were too similar. There were too many sort of little kind of skirmishes and escape from skirmishes for me. Just too many of those.
Second act. You mean the second act?
Yeah, it just got a bit repetitive, and I really liked it when they, as you rightly said earlier, they devised. You've got these fucking, really menacing R2D2s charging towards you on legs. They're going to blow up. They were brilliant, weren't they? I mean, sort of, my God, they literally sort of run like great big sort of. What would you describe it as? A sort of watering sort of barrel, and just plonks itself down and blows up. I mean, it ran the risk of looking a bit too ridiculous, but it was kind of good. I also loved the way in which what happened to Allison Janney, how it happened, the unexpected sort of annihilation that would happen at certain times. But I tell you one thing I did find, although John David Washington was good, I found it cringingly sentimental.
Oh.
Really, I really found it so overtly sentimental. So I'm surprised, because whilst I found the kid a little bit annoying and a bit twee and a bit too good, and I could have really done with a little bit more of them playing with the idea of her being potentially a malevolent force.
Well, I suppose, that would have been another thought.
Well, because they've teed her up as the greatest weapon. So I wanted to believe that at her fingertips was not just the destruction potentially of humans, who we don't like in this film, but John David Washington, all of So I think I was expecting her to be more sinister, and she wasn't sinister. She was just beneficent. She was like the Dalai Lama.
She was just like the Dalai Lama. Yeah, that's true. But I thought she did it in a really, really nice way.
Yeah.
I mean, she bought me. I mean, I bought it.
Right. You'd be popping down to her temple.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Right, okay,
I
fair
would.
enough. Yeah, but, I found it a bit too pure, a bit too holy. And I mean, clearly the final shot is teeing up the prospect or possibility, certainly, of a sequel. Okay, well then give us your summary, give us your score.
Loved the location work, which I never thought I'd hear myself saying that in a film, except possibly Dune.
Yeah.
But, I tell you what I loved as well, the music.
Right, yeah, no, it was good.
It was
good, nice
Zimmer,
soundtrack.
Wasn't it? And I thought it was brilliant. And in a way, I don't know if that's what you mean. He kept keying in sentimental music to give us the girl being a bit sentimental. And you know the way music often does that. But it was such a good score, I thought, that I even forgave.
There were just a few moments where they were travelling from one place to another in, I suppose, the futuristic equivalent of a coach or a tram, and he'd look over it and go, "Life means such and such if you do such and such." And I just thought, I don't want this sort of misty-eyed nonsense in between. I just wish they'd taken out about 15 minutes, tightened up and been a bit more inventive with the combat. I mean, not combat, but just. I don't even want combat, but I think they could have had slightly cleverer or more complex ways of them evading being found. Or when it got into tech, when it got into innovative tech ideas like the head of the person and all that kind of stuff, I thought, this is where go this way. This is really interesting. The nuts and bolts of being alive and fighting in this era.
I mean, in some ways, though, I guess exactly what you're saying, but I felt like, and I never thought I'd say this either, but it wasn't almost long enough, because it kept leaving ideas and then moving on to something
But that's
else.
my point. It was too slavishly attached to these scenes, which were too similar to each other. They could have lost three fighting scenes and built out this other stuff, because I've got a note here saying they could have done with a few more nerve-wracking sequences of survival rather than will we survive this attack.
Yeah, they definitely could. Yeah. I really like the girl, and if one doesn't like the girl, then you're stuck a bit, because
a little bit, not massively. But
So, shall I give it a score?
What would you give
76.
it? Sorry?
76.
76. Okay. Well, everything I've said, I think this was an incredibly ambitious, laudable, exciting. I think lots of people are coming at it. I think lots of people are criticizing it and saying it's all these things, all the things that it isn't, without pausing and thinking for a minute that A, this isn't part of an existing franchise.
Yeah.
You know, Hollywood really needs to start thinking about creating new worlds and new franchises, even, and new IP, intellectual property, new things to discover. You know, even Dune is a rehash, isn't it? All these things are remakes and remakes and remakes. And what you've got to give credit for here is he's trying to create something completely new. And I think that was one of the
original.
Original. That was one of the wonderful things about District 9 when it came out. Was that it's like, oh wow, this is so original, and the execution was so layered and dirty and real, and really should be the benchmark now that nearly all futuristic sci-fi dystopian stuff should look to, rather than that just blanket glossy CGI. So I thought it looked great. I thought it was great. I enjoyed John David Washington's performance. I just think the plotting and the story was unnecessarily confusing. Not because it was complex, just because they kept going here and going there and going here and going there, and I just thought you could have done with less of that. And I thought that it was overly sentimental, and I really, really think they missed a real trick with the kid. They could have parked the possibility of death and destruction of everyone within the click of a finger within this child. I thought we were going to get Thanos in the form of a child's body. And I could have really dealt with that. I could have done with that. Even though, you know, she could have still gone to the good side, but she could have had this edge turn. I think they missed a trick there too. That said, I was really impressed, and I would give this 80 out of 100.
Oh, wow, so you gave it more than me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think I actually genuinely believe it's an important film. I don't necessarily think they'll make another one.
Do.
I don't think it'll make much money, but I think it's a really important moment for people who say they're film lovers and genre lovers to go, oh yeah, that was the film where this kind of thing changed or happened, and I hope it does.
It's really divided the critics, hasn't it? Yeah. Many people hate it as love it. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Tell us what you think. Do go and see it if you get the chance. Let us know your thoughts. If you're a sci-fi fan especially, tell us whether you agree. Do you think this is it's certainly not a perfect film, and I've got there's lots that's wrong with it. But do you, like us or like me, certainly feel that this is this could be the dawn of a new age if people take the right bits from it?